It's getting bumpy, guys. And I don't think it's going to get any better for a while. As somebody that runs a brick and mortar, an online store, sells brand new equipment, vintage used equipment, everything is being affected right now. I think there's some things that a lot of people don't think about. I wouldn't either if I wasn't knee deep in it. I figured I'd stop by the lake, clear my head a little bit. I think I'm a couple miles from the shop. Yeah, and just talk about it. And as we all know right now, things are just changing every single day as far as import costs to bring product into the United States. Yesterday afternoon, we did get the announcement that things would be on pause for 90 days, and we'll definitely talk about that a little bit later. I'm not going to get into politics, and I'm not going to point fingers at any manufacturers or anything like that. I'm just looking at this from a black and white standpoint, from what a small business right now is going through, and why some of the changes that a small business like ours is implementing, what's causing it. Yesterday, we get an email from two of the bigger manufacturers we carry, and they say they are having to raise prices again in order to cover the import costs that are currently going on. And it's a significant amount, it's quite a bit. And I think every manufacturer that's raised prices so far has already said that they are going to try and reduce prices once this all gets settled. And I can't even imagine what those board meetings must be like right now. If you think about a big manufacturing business that's been around a long time and they're out of product in the warehouses, they've got dealers and distributors calling, wanting product to get back in. Those people have customers wanting to buy the product, and the CEOs of these companies are sitting there going, okay, we've got a choice. We can either have more of our product manufactured, even though it's going to cost quite a bit more, or we could try and ride this out. Hopefully, prices come back down and we can stick with our original pricing. And when you don't know if that's going to be 6 months or a year or how long it's going to take for prices to maybe stabilize a little bit, that's a pretty tough decision to make. And I think some of these companies went ahead and had them manufactured and got stuck with those really high import costs. So they're having to raise the prices on the products to offset the cost. I mean, it's just basic business. Now, where the problem comes in is, as a business owner like myself, I don't want to buy a lot of that product at the higher prices, knowing that potentially the manufacturer could lower the prices. Because then if I don't sell the product before they lower them again, I'm stuck selling that product potentially for less money than I paid for it. The margins on a lot of equipment are not that great. And so I have to make the decision, do I let the product run out and potentially lose sales, or do I buy it at a higher price and hope that it sells before they change the price again? Everybody's in a conundrum here. I don't want to seem like I'm complaining. I signed up for this. This is just one of those things you have to deal with as a small business owner. I have to try and navigate this for myself, for the customer, for my family, for everybody involved. And that's part of it. I'm not complaining. This really doesn't seem that much different than the lockdowns that happened a few years ago. And especially for a business like myself that also manufactures some products. It's not a lot. Some of them are manufactured here in the States when I can get them, and I can get them at a decent price that the customer's going to be willing to pay for. And then other products like these types of things, you can only get them overseas. And because of this, I've had orders literally sitting for the last 2 months that I've had on hold, because I didn't want to invest a bunch of money to have a manufacturer make a product for me and then have the import fees be so expensive that I wouldn't even be able to sell them and make my money back. Here's the other problem, which reminds me of the lockdown era when shipping became such an issue. It was so bottlenecked. Now that we got the news yesterday that they're going to hold off on price increases for another 90 days, myself included, got online and sent emails saying, is there any way you could get that product manufactured and to me in this 90-day period? And I can't be the only one. I am a small, small potato here. There are a lot bigger companies purchasing way bigger numbers of things, and they're going to get the priority. It's just business, and I don't blame them for it. So, unfortunately, I'm just going to have to kind of get in line. And if I have to put down a deposit of half of the bill in order for them to manufacture the product, and maybe by chance it doesn't get manufactured in that 90-day window, guess what? I'm either going to forfeit the money I put down to have that product made, or I could potentially have to pay a lot more for it. So it's getting sticky, it's getting hairy. I think the next big hurdle after things level out a little bit will be bottlenecking. The amount of orders from every big manufacturer that are getting submitted right now is crazy. And they haven't even started manufacturing the product. Once they start manufacturing the product, wait till they all try cramming it into shipping containers and getting it over here. The other thing about this that's really kind of odd and interesting is right now we're in the middle of our buying season for vintage stereo equipment. A lot of times people go into their basements or garages in the springtime in Iowa and they think, I want to reclaim this space. I haven't used some of this stuff in a while, and they bring it in. So we usually buy stereo equipment in the springtime that most likely isn't going to get serviced and then resold until possibly November, December, when it starts picking back up again. But right now, we're seeing a huge influx of people selling equipment. Stuff that's on Craigslist just isn't selling. Stuff that's on eBay isn't selling. And in the summer months here in Iowa, it is definitely our slow season. Most people are focused on being outside. They want to go to a park, they go on vacation. They're not focused on two-channel stereo equipment in their living room. That usually picks back up in the fall. So, in a lot of ways, this is a really good time for these bigger companies and everybody else to figure out these new pricing structures because it's the slow time. That's a good thing. On the flip side, I don't know if it's the uncertainty of the market, really where everybody's at, that's pushing people to sell equipment. Maybe they're selling because they're needing some extra money. Or it could be that the bubble's bursting and people just aren't as interested in turntables and physical media and stereo equipment. I don't know either way. Either way is possible. But those are definitely two elements that I think are contributing to the amount of equipment, the amount of vinyl records that are coming into the store for sale. The other interesting thing about that too is we're not seeing the normal 40-year-old records coming into the store for sale. People are bringing in newer represses from 5 years ago. They're bringing in stereo equipment from 5 years ago. A lot of the LP60s that were sold during the lockdowns are coming back in. Again, I don't know if that's because of lack of interest or if that's because it's just getting tight for people out there financially. And this is something we've heard a few times now. We've raised prices on a couple different products already from manufacturers because they tell us, on this day, you have to raise the map. We can't deviate from that. If we do, we can be in trouble with the manufacturer. Everybody has to sell at the same price. And we've had people say, you raised your prices overnight. I know you've got stock. That's wrong. You're making more money off of it because they raised the price. And I will tell you this, at least from my standpoint, we have such a small space. We have 1,500 square feet. And so this forces us to keep razor thin inventory. A lot of times we only have one or two of every product or every SKU in stock just because of the limitations with the size and space that we can store things. We usually ramp up inventory right before November, but really from February all the way through October, we're running about as lean as we can. We're almost ordering every week or every other week from most of the manufacturers just to keep our inventory down. And especially now, because prices are fluctuating so much, the worst thing we could do is buy up a bunch of inventory and then have the manufacturer drop the price. That would be a death sentence. It really would. I don't really have any great advice for you out there, except for vintage right now. It seems you can pick it up cheap. As far as buying new product, I hate to say it, as somebody that sells new product, I think we're going to kind of have to wait and see how all this plays out. But right now, I think everybody's just guessing. I'd like to think the manufacturers are doing the best they can to absorb some of the losses and not put those costs on their dealers and customers. But they're in a tough spot too. I get why it could be really difficult to make these decisions. I try and be an optimistic person, and I hope that this all works itself out. I hope that everybody's got the best intention wherever they are in the supply chain. We are not going to try and gouge anybody. We just want to provide a good product at a fair price. We're a small business in Iowa. We're just trying to make an honest buck. That is it. And if we can do that, I'm happy. We have people that will say when it comes to our vintage equipment that, you're a rip-off artist. And then in the same sentence, they go, I wish we had one of these in our city. You do see how that's kind of an oxymoron, right? I mean, if this was easy and we were a rip-off artist rolling in the dough, you don't think there'd be a Skylapse type of shop in every single city in America? Of course there would be, but it's not. This is not easy work. There's nothing easy about it. It's not a get rich scheme by any stretch of the imagination. I've been doing this for 9 years. To think I've made minimum wage in those 9 years for every hour I work? Pfft, no way. Absolutely no way. We're just doing the best we can. We're trying to provide a good product, make a decent living, and that's it. If you can do that, small business in America in 2025, you're winning. You just put your pants back on and go back to work because you don't want to do anything different. That's just the way it is. I hope everybody's doing great. Hope I didn't bum anybody out or rile anybody up too much. It doesn't need to be about that. I'm just looking at the black and white and, the numbers. Thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. I hope you have a great week, and I hope we get back to our regular content. So, thank you.